Well, hey, Life Science. Hope you're doing well when you watch this video. So today I want to talk to you about lesson 3 in topic 4 about evolution, the process of evolution. So I hope to help you understand how inherited variations drive natural selection. We'll talk about fitness today. I'll also briefly talk to you about sexual selection and coevolution, how all this works out. So when I was young, I used to love watching the strongman competitions on ESPN. These guys would like bench press cars and like deadlift like 800, 900 pounds, which is ridiculous. They would literally take these huge, ginormous boulders and like lift them up on top of like these pedestals. And it blew me away. But let me ask you a question. If you're up in below zero, there's some TV shows on like National Geographic and Discovery. But yeah, if you put this guy, super strong, he's not playing around, right? Not the wicked beard there. I've seen better, but nonetheless, hey, there it is. And this lady with all her dogs, you're like, well, this guy is stronger. But in the environment, if he were to go into her environment, she would have a higher fitness level because she knows how to deal with the land, deal with the elements, hunt for food, gather food, protect herself from the cold effects of winter. This show is called Below Zero. So fitness is actually not just about strength. Fitness is also about how well an organism can survive and reproduce in its environment. So it's very highly involved with the environment that an organism finds itself in. So this is a picture from your book. You can see that the male duck here is very much brightly colored compared to the female duck. And why is this? Why is this? Well, you'll see hopefully in this lesson that natural selection is not the only thing working, just kind of random chance. But there's also sexual selection involved about, females choosing which male to mate with and create offspring with. There's also coevolution involved. But this duck wouldn't blend in very well compared to the female. So how in the world did it make it? Well, there's more than survival of the fittest going on. So all these changes that are, evident in life are based, according to evolutionary theory, based upon mutations. We've already talked about mutations in a previous video, but I did want to briefly review with you that mutations are primarily permanent changes in the DNA strand. And I went through that sentence about changing them up and like talking about the different types of mutations, point mutations, insertion, deletions, all that jazz. But mutations are very important because a lot of the diseases that humans go through are based upon genetic mutations. Some of us have certain versions of BRCA1, which is BRCA1, which is an example of a cancer gene. And some mutations increase your chances for cancer compared to others. And so genetic testing is definitely on the forefront of a lot of scientists, research and companies. Of course, everybody's focused on the virus right now, but when that passes, genetic testing is still at the forefront of technology. And so you can see here that, here's your normal code, and you have a certain protein, amino acid sequence. So DNA is the blueprint. You have roughly 3 billion base pairs in your DNA code, and how they're arranged determined kind of how you look, maybe your weaknesses, your strengths. DNA doesn't define us, but it definitely sets the template. But there could be substitutions and insertions and deletions, and you can see that all those mutations could have changes. Now, evolution says that these changes had to be beneficial, but for the most part, mutations, there's usually no effect, so it's null or it's deleterious, which means that it's a negative effect. It actually harms the individual's fitness level. It actually harms the individual. And so most mutations are one of those two choices. For evolution to occur, though, millions upon millions of beneficial mutations had to have happened. Again, going from hundreds, even like 50 base pairs to us, which, so take a single cell, right? Maybe thousands, 50, I don't know, not that many DNA base pairs in there or RNA. But to go from that single cell organism to us, who have 3 billion base pairs, that takes a lot of faith to believe in. And so there's been a lot of Christians that have argued, of course, against this and brought up some really impressive probability numbers, but we don't have time to get into that today. But I encourage you to look it up if you ever wonder about like all these different arguments. But there's other sources of new alleles. So mutations give new alleles, new variations to genes. Genes can have many different alleles. But there's 2 other different ways to get differences. That wasn't the best sentence. But there's gene flow and genetic drift. So gene flow is basically when an organism from one area moves into the population of in another area. So it's kind of like immigration. So you have all these butterflies or insects or something, and these guys all contain certain genes, alleles. But what happens if one rogue butterfly, he's like, peace out, dude, I'm out. Um, it goes into this other population. Well, that's gene flow. Gene flow is alleles moving because individuals are moving. There's another thing, another way that alleles can change in a population called genetic drift. Genetic drift is when random changes. Again, evolution is all about random, right? And there's no purpose. There's no purpose. There's no designer. There's no, specific action for a specific person. Everything's random. Random changes in allele frequencies from one generation to the next. So this is literally genetic drift. So you have a population of butterflies. We'll just say with the butterfly theme, and all of a sudden these guys just die, maybe due to like development or a landslide or volcanic eruption or something crazy happens, but they just die by chance. Well, that is genetic drift. That's random changes. There's two different types of genetic drift you'll learn in high school: bottleneck effect and founder effect. But I just want to talk to you briefly, just to help you understand genetic drift, founder effect. Founder effect is basically like when certain individuals leave like a big population and go and found a new population, and then they just grow that population within that genetic drift. A great example of this is the Amish community. The Amish community does not really breed outside of their community. They do not marry outside their community, and so like their founders set up the community. And so you can see here that the ancestral population, all these different colors stand for genetic diversity, different alleles. But you can see here that chance event restricts alleles. So this was a founder effect. So these guys literally founded, the Amish, certain communities. And so you can see that the genetic diversity is a lot lower than it would be normally. And so that's an example of genetic drift. And so here's an illustration from your book. So you have your original snake population. Those are some really weird looking snakes. But let's say that humans obviously, help out with gene flow a lot. But this would be gene flow, two snakes being introduced, and then genetic drift would be some just, dying by chance. Okay, and then that is the difference between gene flow and genetic drift. The famous peacock. It's and the eyes and and everything. But this is a peacock trying to impress a female. The next thing that your book talks about is sexual selection. So what this peacock is trying to do is to impress this female enough so that she mates with him, and he gets to pass on his genes. And so sexual selection, there's 2 points of sexual selection. There's the female choice and there's male competition. And you can look up on YouTube like extravagant bird songs. Birds sing, birds dance, birds do so many like they show off colorful feathers. I showed 2 elephant seals fighting here because that's another example of competition. The strongest will win. But what's the purpose of all this? Animals aren't really driven by exactly what we're driven by as far as this goes. What's the key thing about this is that the male that competes the best will have the best genes. Okay, that's what this is all based upon. The male that wins probably has the best genes to pass on to the next generation. And you might be tempted to think like, well, that doesn't happen in humans, but we're actually, remember we live in a fallen world, and so we're not perfect and we struggle. But this is a picture from a Brain Games episode. It's kind of fuzzy. But you can see here, like, which picture would you consider the most attractive? Just a nice looking lady, right? 1, 5, 7, or 10. And most people would say, 7. But why is that? Like, by far, the majority would say 7. They find this out. Well, because all of us have programmed within us what looks attractive. And it's based upon symmetry, literally. There's like mathematical formulas for an attractive face. It's crazy. But why is this program within us? Well, it's all about successful genes. See, what's unusual and what they claim in the Brain Games episode, I believe it's called Laws of Attraction, is that they claim that most people are attractive because most people have successful genes. It's when you get the extremes that you're like, oh, that's not successful genes arrangements, of course. And of course, the Bible has a lot different to say about attractiveness. Thinking about Samuel and David, right? Samuel was going to anoint the next king at 1 Samuel, I believe it's 16, and he sees Eliab, and he's like, hey, this must be the next king just based on outward appearance. And God's like, listen, don't look at him. That's not who I picked. God, I don't see like man sees. I look at the heart. That's what God tells Samuel. I'm paraphrasing, of course. Read it for yourself. But thankfully, He does. But that's just an example, right? We're programmed, at least due to the effects of sin because of genes. We are searching for successful genes when picking out a mate. The last thing that your book talks about in this lesson is coevolution. So I wanted to define this for you. Coevolution occurs when two or more species reciprocally, so give and take, affect each other's evolution through the process of natural selection. So your book gives you the example of acacia trees and ants, especially in Central America. And so these ants right here literally use the acacia tree for housing, for food. The queen lays the eggs and stuff inside of it. But what do the ants give the acacia tree? Well, the ants give the acacia tree protection. You can also look up pretty crazy videos, ants attacking grasshoppers and cutting off vines to protect their tree. But this is coevolution because this development of the acacia tree is so specific to this one ant that many scientists believe, like, well, this must be coevolution. There's some orchids and some other examples out there, but you do need to know the difference between coevolution and sexual selection. So evolution as a process, evolution, um, the process of evolution. So I hope this was helpful, guys. I hope you're doing well and your family are doing well. Keep praying, keep hoping and trusting in God. Until next time, I'll talk to you later.